Well, hello everyone. They try to scare us about everything, but we're not going to fall for it. Stay with us. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the beginning of the last days. My name is Laura-Lynn Thompson. I'm so excited to be with you. You are my favorite all-time people to be with, and I just thank you so much for your letters, your emails. Not some of you, your emails suck. Okay, but no, I'm just kidding. I can take it. Not everybody's in alignment with the truth that we share here, but most of you all are, and you're a blessing to me, and I thank you for your beautiful kindness, your encouragement, and walking with us through this storm. So as you know, whenever we start this show, we start with my father's wonderful, incredible Bible. And he left this treasure to me. And we're going to be talking about climate today, climate alarmism, climate change. Apparently if you don't believe in all this stuff, you're a racist. And that, of course, makes total sense, 100%. So I looked at my dad and I thought, okay, we're talking about creation. What would my dad have sort of done? And I went to Genesis and, he loved Genesis because the book of Genesis, oh my goodness, it is underlined, from beginning to end. It's just, there's a lot of material here. Oh no, I dropped some very precious writings of his. I'll get them after the show. It's okay. Let's start at the beginning. My dad has this underlined. It says Genesis 1:1. How did this all start? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. Well, it goes on and on. If I start reading you everything that my dad underlined, it's the whole of Genesis. But the thing about what God did was that he created things by speaking. And that's the power of our words. And in James, it talks about the power of the tongue. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. And you know what? The evil dudes, they use their tongue to lie. They use their tongues to deceive. They use their words to put fear into our hearts. And so we are going to use the power of words, of knowledge, of science. God is a God of science. I 100% will tell you that if the science is actually there, God created it. And science always backs up God's word. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? Science does not back up lies. Science backs up the word of God. The deceivers that are out there, they have a way of creating their own agenda, ideologies, their own science, so to speak, so that they can frighten us with it. And we're not going to fall for that. So before we get to our very esteemed guest today, he is an expert. He is going to be able to tell us some facts that will set your heart at ease. But before we do that, I'm going to just scare you a little. Okay, so in Australia, it's just been reported the first case of human H5N1 avian influenza bird flu. So what are they saying, JT? Is this, that's very small for me to try to look at. Is it in a person? Yeah. It's in a person. I thought we had already had somebody, but this is just in Australia, I guess, because they already had someone else. And so the other someone else, they got the sniffles, a lot like some other people who just got sniffles. Anyways, I can't talk about certain things. We're on all the platforms today and we're going to stay there. And I just want to run really quick this quick video talking about EV manufacturing plans. And this is on CTV's Power Play. Lisa Raitt talks about what a Trump presidency might mean to Trudeau's EV manufacturing plans. Take a look.
Prospects for being worried about what kind of an agenda with respect to Canada Donald Trump might bring with him. And just to add some brief context for our viewers, that the latest polling shows in 5 of the 6 swing states where essentially the election will be decided, Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden right now.
So I would say this, that if you take a look at what the Liberals have been dining out on recently, it's all of these very large announcements of deals with various automakers for electric vehicles for the entire supply chain. All of this is predicated on a market being available in the United States. If Donald Trump gets reelected, he will not go on to say that EVs must be mandatory by a certain year. He will not go on to continuously provide subsidies and tax credits for the production of electric vehicles. He's going to pump the brakes on all of that, which puts into great danger all of these investments that the Liberal Party has been putting front and center as their big centerpiece of what they're doing on the Canadian economy. That should be worrying. That's exactly what they should be worrying about. And quite frankly, there's nothing you can do about it. If Donald Trump gets elected, he has stated very clearly what he's going to do with respect to electric vehicles. And there goes all of these big announcements with these automakers. It's over.
Oh, so sad. So sad for you. We'll see what happens. Here's the thing, and our esteemed guest is going to join us, but let's talk about Canada for just a moment. Our Prime Minister has invested billions of dollars into basically wanting us to, in the cold, have electric vehicles, which the batteries have all kinds of problems. You can't go very far. How am I going to get from here to Kelowna? I mean, can I do it on one battery, JT? Or if I'm going to Kelowna, do I have to I can't make it? I mean, this is a 4-hour trip. Like, it's ridiculous. None of this works. It's just crazy. So we don't, and CTV, how crazy are they? Really, just so much ignorance about what the people of Canada actually want. They're buying their trucks. They're making sure that they've got them and that they can run them for an awful long time. I mean, so much is wrong. All right, we don't have time to go into all of it. I want to get to our guest today, Dr. Calvin Beisner, and he has a PhD. He's president of the Cornwall Alliance for the Stewardship of Creation. He's an interdisciplinary scholar in philosophy, religion, economics, the history of political thought, and environmental ethics. He is a prolific writer and has lectured around the world to churches, seminaries, and testified as an expert witness on the ethics and economics of climate change. Dr. Calvin, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us today.
Laura, thank you very much for having me on. It's a privilege.
It's our privilege, actually. And we're a bit, before we get to everything that you want to cover, what do you think about these electric vehicles and the investment and what our governments are doing, trying to push us into something that really Canadians and I'm assuming Americans don't really want?
Well, EVs are in some ways pretty magnificent technology in terms of their sophistication. But magnificent technology in sophistication doesn't necessarily make good economic sense. There are trade-offs in everything we do in life. And the problem with EVs is that their cost of operation, once you include all of the government subsidies and all of the government tax credits that go into them, far exceed the cost of operation of internal combustion engine vehicles, ICEs. And of course, as you mentioned in your intro, they don't necessarily go very far. In extremely cold weather, they lose a huge amount of their charge. When you're in very hot weather and you're running your air conditioner, as happens in lots of places in the southern parts of the US and elsewhere, you also lose a lot of charge. So EVs lack the convenience of ICEs. They also, when you include all of the various different things that go into them, not just simply the price that their buyer pays, which already averages about $20,000 more than ICEs, and not just simply the price that their operator pays for the electricity when they charge them, because if you include all of the other parts of that are disguised, it actually turns out to be the equivalent of about $17 a gallon for gasoline. Other than that, EVs are just wonderful.
Other than that, okay, we're in agreement. And I didn't really ever think about that whole air conditioning thing because it's not that often in Canada that we have to turn the air conditioner on. We do need to do it, maybe like in July or August, but otherwise we're just cold. I mean, like it's May right now and it is freezing cold. Like last night, it's freezing. And I just don't, I just think what is going on? I'm waiting for global warming to actually take effect so that palm trees can be grown in Vancouver, British Columbia. That would be really cool. So they tell us, and they really scare us about climate change these days. There's potential for the WHO and all of those big elite organizations to implement things to, make us stay at home, shelter in place because of not just bird flu or disease X that they might come up with, but because of climate. So maybe give me some overview on what your take is on this growing phenomenon of scaring the world regarding climate change.
Yeah, sure. Our view, we are between two extremes on the spectrum about climate change. The one extreme is man-made climate change is real. It's a crisis. It's a catastrophe lurking around the corner. It is, as President Biden once called it, an existential threat. In fact, he said that it was a bigger threat than possible nuclear war, which I think is just absolutely incomprehensible, right? On the opposite extreme, there's the attitude that says that man-made climate change doesn't even exist. If it did exist, there would be no problems that come along with it. Everything would just be peachy keen. We have absolutely nothing to worry about. Both of those extremes, I think, are ruled out, by good, solid empirical science. And that's the kind of thing that we brought together in a book that we just released 2 months ago called Climate and Energy, The Case for Realism. The realism is the fact that we are between those two extremes. This is the work of 16 different scholars, including 9 of the world's top climate scientists, including a number of environmental and developmental economists and energy specialists, energy engineers, energy economists, and so on. And the basic message of this book is that human-induced climate change is real. It's not a crisis. It's not a catastrophe. It will bring some costs, but probably the benefits of the warming will actually outweigh the risks that the warming brings. And certainly, the benefits of the vast amounts of abundant, affordable, reliable energy that we get from fossil fuels, which are blamed primarily for climate change, and the benefit of more plant growth from all the CO2 that we put into the atmosphere when we burn those fossil fuels, the benefits of that energy and that added plant growth far outweigh any of the costs of the climate change itself. And the cost of trying to control the climate change, to slow, stop, or reverse global warming, would far exceed the benefits that we would get from that. So that's kind of the basics. In this book, we try to give readers, and it's a big book, 464 pages, but we try to give readers a good basic introduction to the science of climate. We talk about greenhouse gases and how they relate, about the contribution of the ocean, of precipitation, evaporation, and clouds, the contributions of the sun, various natural cycles that are involved in this. And then we also talk about the costs of attempting to mitigate climate change and what would be the results of those costs, which are essentially no real benefit. And then we point out how all of the policies meant to try to reduce climate change are harmful, especially to the world's poor. What we would be demanding of the world's poor is that they not use the most abundant, affordable, reliable sources of energy, and therefore we would be demanding that they slow, stop, or reverse their conquest of poverty. And poverty is a far greater risk to human health and life than anything related to climate or weather. So overcoming poverty is a far more important thing to do than trying to control the climate. The very fact that over the last 100 years, average annual human mortality due to extreme weather events has fallen by more than 98% shows us that climate is not the danger, poverty is.
Well, that's a fascinating perspective, and putting it in a hierarchy of what is truly important. And I really like your, when your organization is concentrating on a balanced perspective. We do know that China doesn't regard any of these sort of climate initiatives, and India as well. They don't care about these things. But here we are, like in Canada, for many years, we had, what was it called? We had to take our car into air care. Therefore, we barely ever see anyone with black smoke coming out of the back of their vehicles here, because you had to go to air care. And if your car, did these things, then you had to pay 50 extra bucks every time you go get your insurance to make sure you have that. So our air kind of did clean up after they put that in. And I think that that's positive. And there are things that we can do. But what do you feel are some of the overreaches where they're not being logical and they're turning this into an agenda to bring harm to us?
Let me give you 3 quick examples of what I would call overreach. The first is the Paris Agreement,
The Paris
done in
Climate Accord?
2015 at the big Paris Climate Summit. The Paris Agreement seeks to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial global average temperature. Assuming what the supporters of the Paris Agreement themselves think, the cost of doing that would average between $1 and $2 trillion per year from 2015 to the end of the century. That comes to 23.3 to 46.6 trillion dollars over the period. And again, assuming their own assumptions, right? The amount of warming prevented by that would be 0.17 degrees Celsius, or 0.3 of a degree Fahrenheit. Now, what that means is that the cost is $23.3 to $46.6 trillion per 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit of global warming prevented. Now, that amount of prevention of global warming has no impact on any ecosystem and no impact on human well-being. And therefore, it's just simply a total waste, worse than a waste, because it takes all of that money away from things that could really be doing a lot of good for people, such as improving nutrition, improving access to clean drinking water, to sewage sanitation, to education and better transportation, all sorts of different things. So there's one example. A second example, excuse me, is the UN's notion that somehow or other we have to limit global warming to no more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperature. Now, the cost of doing that, according to the UN, is somewhere in the neighborhood of over $2 trillion per year. And again, the result would be hardly any reduction in warming. And by the way, I still think that the warming itself is going to bring more benefit than harm, so you don't really want to reduce it. But then here's the last of my 3. Nowadays, the big demand is that we achieve net zero. That is a perfect balance of our emissions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere with our extraction of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, so as to stop the added warming of CO2. Now, again, taking the UN's own assumptions, the cost of doing that will average, a cost of achieving net zero by 2050, will average $27 trillion per year for the globe from now to the end of the century. At the end of the century, it will have risen to $68 trillion per year. Now, What's the benefit of that? Well, according to the UN, if we did nothing to slow global warming, the warming would reduce gross world product in the year 2100 by about 2.6%. But that's 2.6% of what the gross world product would be at the end of this century. And the best economic modeling says that gross world product at the end of this century, without any warming, would be about 8.96 times as much as what it is today. Take 2.6% off of that, and you have people still being better off by 8.66%. Is being 8.66% times 8.66 times as wealthy at the end of this century as you are now, is that a big problem? I don't think so. And it's not worth spending trillions of dollars to try to prevent it. Instead, it's something that we should chase.
Wow, that is such good information. And yet they just want to scare us to bits over all of this. And some of the initiations that they want to put forward, potentially they'll stop travel across the globe if they feel that there's a climate catastrophe or something. I love your Twitter page. I just want to say, I was looking here, Cornwall Alliance, everyone. So at Cornwall Steward. And I think that you've put that under his name graphic, right, JT? But so Pennsylvania's climate has improved over the past 130 years with warmer winters and fewer extremely hot days. Governor Shapiro says, let's base policies on evidence and not alarmism. So, we're all looking for a place to go to get some really solid climate truth in the midst of the lies that are coming to us every night on mainstream media. So I just want to thank your organization for this kind of information. I'm heading to the Switzerland Geneva Convention, wherein they are trying to force all of us to put in this global pandemic accord, whereby they would compel the world in the event of a catastrophe, which may be a climate catastrophe. It doesn't have to just be some sort of new pandemic. They want everyone to act in accord with what Tedros, the great guru of all that is true and right concerning these things, will tell us exactly what to do, And so your organization is really there to bring this balanced perspective of what the truth is and what it isn't. And do you see in all of the studying, and you have a very esteemed CV, do you believe that we are in a climate catastrophe in any area? Like maybe you want to say, we are failing in certain areas. Is there anything you would want to say might be something that we would focus on in that regard?
All of us want to sound more reasonable to the world. And so that gives us all the temptation to try to compromise things a bit. I just can't do that. The fact is that there is nothing about climate or weather that is getting worse. Now, computer climate models are designed basically to tell us that as the world warms, extreme weather events like hurricanes, floods, droughts, heat waves, cold snaps, tornadoes, wildfires, extreme weather events will get more frequent and more severe. That's what the computer models tell us. But our actual real world observations tell us something very different. There has been no increase in either the frequency or the severity of any extreme weather events over the last 60 years or so, the very period during which so much of this global warming has occurred. As a matter of fact, in terms of hurricanes, there's been a slight decrease in the number and strength of hurricanes, which makes sense, by the way, because, and you referred to this a little bit by implication a little bit ago when you talked about Pennsylvanians welcoming some warming, so would lots of Canadians, right? The warming that comes from our adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere happens primarily toward the poles, primarily in winter, primarily at night, not toward the equator in the summer in the daytime. In other words, very cold temperatures rise significantly. Very hot temperatures are hardly affected at all. Now, the result of that is that the difference in temperature between the equator and the poles shrinks. And the purpose of hurricanes, the function of them in the climate system, is to move heat from the equator to the poles and cold from the poles toward the equator. If there's less difference between the two, there's less work for hurricanes to do. And that's been a basic understanding of hurricane meteorology for many decades. And unfortunately, the climate alarmists just ignore that. So, no, there is no part of weather and climate that is getting worse with global warming. In fact, history tells us that humanity and plants and all animals do better in a warmer world than in a colder world. So we should all welcome this.
Right. Well, I have a share again from your Twitter page, which I've just followed, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on everything you guys say. But media narratives often don't tell the whole story. In Somalia, camel populations have surged in recent decades, despite claims that climate change threatens the industry. So this is good stuff, everyone, to make sure that on Twitter you're following Cornwall Alliance. Very fascinating.
Can I stick a little idea in here too?
Yeah.
Some people think that climate change is going to drive the so-called sixth great extinction. We'll have thousands and thousands, maybe millions of species driven extinct by climate change. The opposite is true. I've already mentioned that animals and plants do better in a warmer world than in a colder world. But in addition, all the things that depend on plants are going to do better in a world with more CO2. Why? Because plants use CO2 for photosynthesis. And the more of it is in the atmosphere, the better they grow. Well, what that means is more food for everything that eats plants and more food that everything that eats something that does eat plants. Plants also not only increase their growth, but they improve their fruit to fiber ratio, and they grow better in warmer and cooler temperatures, in wetter and drier soils, and they make better use of soil nutrients. As a result, they expand their ranges. They grow in places they didn't used to be able to grow. Now, since that's happening, all the critters that depend on those plants get to expand their ranges too. So global warming, driven by more CO2 in the atmosphere, to the extent that it does drive it, and by the way, it's actually a bit player, but global warming, and especially the added CO2 in the atmosphere, is actually good news. And if you're worried about extinction, you should be really glad for more CO2 in the atmosphere and for more warmth in the planet.
I mean, isn't this the complete opposite of what we're being, told on the news? Like, we're being scared. CO2, like, carbon dioxide. It's like, don't plants need that? On your website. So everyone, if you're not on Twitter, you can also go to cornwallalliance.org. And this is the website, and all kinds of the issues. There's a blog there, landmark documents, and climate change is normal and natural and can't be controlled. Now, that's something that, I would like to see on our nightly, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, CTV Global, and who else is up here? CBC. Up here in Canada, if they would just, of course it doesn't, draw eyes maybe because you're not scaring everyone and they think, oh no, we've got to watch because something calamitous is going to happen. But climate, I guess, has been adjusting over the centuries. We can look back and go, oh, it was cooler here. I think we had an ice age. I think, all kinds of things have happened, not to mention a great flood in times past. So, this is maybe something that just happens, and instead they're making a way to create money out of it, I think.
Yeah, you sort of tipped your hat at what I think is the main reason you won't hear this good news from the mainstream media. And that is that, as journalists have been saying for many, many decades, bad news is good news. Good news is no news. The reason for that is that bad news draws eyeballs. And if you want to pay your bills as a newspaper or as a news broadcast or whatever, if you want to pay your bills, you depend primarily on advertising dollars. Well, advertisers are going to buy more advertising if they know that they get a lot of eyeballs. So the journalists know that to get the eyeballs, you have to say bad news, not good news. So that's what's basically behind this. It's all about money, and it's all about where the money goes. It goes to the people who control the narrative. But the actual scientific evidence and the economic evidence is very, very different from that. That is that, yeah, human-induced climate change is real, but not a problem. And trying to fight it is going to do far more harm than good.
Wow. That's amazing. So on your website, it says here, NASA claimed that Earth is warming at an unprecedented rate. This is how they just freak us out. You know what I mean? Like, people are just sitting there. Yeah. They're going on antidepressants. They're like, what's happening? They're getting their kids, and the schools are alarming the young kids about things like this, so that the kids are becoming warriors for climate, and it's all
Tragic.
Nonsense, right? And then it says, and human activity is the principal cause. Others propose spending trillions of dollars. So there it is, the money that you're talking about to control the climate. But are we humans responsible for climate change, and what can we do about it? The climate of planet Earth has never stopped changing since the Earth's genesis, sometimes relatively rapidly, sometimes very slowly, but always surely, says Patrick Moore. And I love Patrick Moore. He definitely brings a lot of science to all of this climate nonsense. But hoping for a perfect climate's never going to happen. We're always going to have these storms that are in Florida and different places. And we're always going to have these snow blizzards and, cold temperatures here in Canada. If there were a slight global warming like you're talking about, that would actually be a positive thing. I know all Ontarians, so from the east coast of Canada to the west coast in British Columbia, we would all welcome a little climate warming, and we all laugh, when it's freezing.
Yeah. Laura, you and I as Christians have an additional reason to the science to reject this whole catastrophe narrative. And that is that we believe that God designed the climate system. And at the end of Genesis, we read that God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Now, we're being told by the catastrophists, the climate catastrophists, that our increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from about 27 thousandths of 1%, which is what it was before the Industrial Revolution, to today about 42 thousandths of 1%, is going to cause a climate catastrophe. Now think about that. An infinitely wise God designed, an infinitely wise, powerful God created, and an infinitely faithful God sustains the earth and everything in it, including the climate system. The notion that increasing CO2 from 27 thousandths of 1% of the atmosphere to 42 thousandths of 1% of the atmosphere is going to cause catastrophe is kind of like saying, okay, an architect designs a building so that if you lean against a wall, all of the different feedback mechanisms in it will multiply the stress from your weight until the whole building collapses. Now, would we think of that architect as brilliant, or would we think that he's nuts? I think we'd think he's nuts. But that's not the God we have. That's not the God we serve. And this God promised himself in Genesis 8:22, following the flood, that as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will not cease. That's a Hebrew poetic device called merism, in which the opposite ends of a spectrum basically mean, those and everything else in between, right? And it's repeated 4 times, so that the sense of this promise of God to himself is that he will sustain all of the cycles on which life depends on this planet for as long as he sustains the planet itself. And so we as Christians have, in addition to empirical scientific reasons to think that climate change is not a disaster, we have a theological reason as well, revealed in Scripture, the very Word of God.
Wow. And you know, one of the things that you're saying on your website here too is about the spiritual aspect of this. And you describe this story, and I don't know if you can tell it in a short measure, but the most bizarre experience of your life, and basically bringing you to understand that we are not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against principalities. This is a spiritual war as well.
Yeah, you know, I'd basically just say your viewers should just look that up and go to it on our website. It tells the story of a situation in which an organization, which I will not name, asked me to appear as part of a panel discussion on these issues, and paid for me to fly to a particular city, and everything turned out very different from what was told to me. And again, I'm not going to name the organization. I'm not going to name the city. There are some important reasons for why. But people can read about this experience. Basically, what it showed me was that the folks on the other side are going to do all they can to quiet me, to quiet the Cornwall Alliance. You know, I take it this way. Bomber pilots back in World War II used to say, if you're seeing a lot of flak, it's because you're over the target. Well, the fact that we've been attacked this way just tells me we're over the target. The other side is very concerned about us, which I take as a compliment.
It is a compliment, and the enemy of our souls and our lives wants to look for any possible lies, deceptions that will bring upheaval, crisis to our lives, that will bring stress. And for some reason, the enemy's really concentrated on this whole issue of climate, and you know, and even food is becoming an interesting sort of you know, issue and concern. I mean, to think that as human beings, we just need air, water, and food. And somehow people are trying to destroy food production, you know, on our planet. Mm-hmm. And you guys highlight some of that on your Twitter and your and your website. So I thank you for this. I think that, you know, the tool of the enemy is to bring fear, but God has not given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. There's not a lot of sound minds out there, and your story pretty much highlights that. You know, people are kind of crazy, and I hope everyone will go to the website and read it. But you are of sound mind. And so do you think that, in closing, please let us know, first of all, how you were saying that, you know, people could support your cause, and we've got your book as well. We'll highlight that one more time. But would like to, you know, close with what the Lord is helping us to stand firm in when we're, you know, barraged with this nonsense.
Well, you know, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And our focus is on the middle one of those two, the truth. We're seeking to bring truth to all sorts of different issues related to environment and to economic development. Our great concern is that so many different environmental policies, especially related to climate change, would slow, stop, or reverse the conquest of poverty around the world, condemning billions of people to poverty and to the high rates of disease and premature death that invariably accompany that. So that's our main focus. And people can support us by donations. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization in the United States. And as a matter of fact, for your viewers, your listeners, as our way of saying thank you when they make a 100% tax deductible donation of any size to the Cornwall Alliance, we will gladly send them a free copy of this 464-page hardback book, Climate and Energy, The Case for Realism. All they have to do is go to cornwallalliance.org/donate. That's cornwallalliance.org/donate. And as they fill out the donation form there, they can enter in terms of a promo code or a comment, just simply say, please send me climate and energy, and we'll be glad to send it. And 100% of the gift will be tax deductible. We're supported entirely by gifts from individuals. We don't have big oil, we don't have big coal, we don't have big gas or anything else like that. We are supported by individuals. And our aim is to teach people how to enhance the fruitfulness, the beauty, and the safety of the earth to the glory of God and the benefit of our neighbors, so that we're addressing the two great commandments, to love God and to love neighbor. So, Laura, thanks so much for giving me an opportunity to reach your viewers. It's been a privilege, and God bless you.
God bless you as well. And what great information. Thank you so much for your time today. Take care.
You're welcome.
I really like it, everyone. I like knowing places that you can get good information, and to think that this organization, which is a charitable organization in the United States, is just constantly putting out stuff to take away the fear about all the climate. If you've got some kids that are in university or even in high school and they're being scared, and teachers are telling them things, we've got to actually be the ones that give our kids the resources and the tools to come against all the nonsense that they're being taught. So I love it. Make sure you tune into that. And just for X, on X, they are at Cornwall Steward. Steward. Cornwall is Cornwall, Steward. Very wonderful. Thank God for men like this gentleman. Let's take a moment, and of course, ongoing issues. So apparently, some countries in the world, in Europe, would like to designate Palestine as a state. Oh, now that Hamas, who was basically been voted in by the people of Palestine, people all over Canada and the United States saying that, we are Hamas, long live Hamas. Now that they've, brutally gone into Israel on a very wicked day, killed over 1,200 innocent people that had no idea they were coming. No idea. This was an unprovoked attack, unprovoked, unnecessary, and they come in and do this. And now certain countries in the world think that now, the Palestinians should be given their state, when they have been offered it several times, by the way. Ask Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was actually involved with this. And so if I can show this. So if you got my share there. So today, Hamas takes credit, the recognition of the Palestinian state because of the war. So senior Hamas official Hussam Badran, a bad dude, in an interview with Al Jazeera, says the European countries' recognition of a Palestinian state came after the Tafan al-Aqsa and the firm stand of the resistance. Oh, the resistance that went in, murdered, and psychopathically did the most brutal killings of modern time. And they wanted, and these Hamas people now want to take credit for it. I mean, the world has lost their ever-loving minds, if you ask me. So let's take a look at Bill Maher. He visits The View and proceeds to educate the ladies on the Hamas-Israel war. Take a look.
Concerned about the innocent civilians that have been collectively punished and murdered, largely children and women. And are you at all concerned about the fact that the International Criminal Court just today issued a subpoena for Bibi Netanyahu?
Well, that's ridiculous, but it's a war.
Why?
It's a war. Because it's a war, and they were attacked, and they're defending themselves. Now, this is a war. Do you think Hamas needs to be destroyed? This is the question.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So how can we get out
with
a ceasefire?
All right. So Hamas needs to be destroyed because they are a terrorist organization who say openly that they want to commit genocide on the Jewish people, on the state of Israel. That's what from the river to the sea means, okay? And they say it very openly. They said, we did this attack. They've attacked Israel 5 times. They've started 5 wars since they were given that land back. They could have chosen to turn that place into any place they wanted to, and they took a lot of money that they took from the international community and they spent it on bombs and guns and building tunnels. So if they need to be destroyed, how do we do that? It's a war. I don't know how to do that, and you don't know how to do that.
So this is exactly what I wrote. There's someone that bombards me with emails regarding, the genocide and all of that. And I can only reiterate myself that on October 7th, none of those moms, families that were burned alive to death knew the morning they got up that would be their last day. They didn't know there was an attack coming. Because why? Because there was no war. There was a ceasefire. No one was supposed to be firing on anyone, and indeed, Israel wasn't. Hamas was constantly lobbying their things, whereby, Israel had to get that Iron Dome put in because these crazy nuts, even after being given the West Bank and Gaza, used it constantly, took all this money instead of helping their people, instead of making Gaza a world-renowned resort on the Mediterranean Sea with all of that beach area. Instead of doing something positive, they use their funds not to take care of the people. They enrich themselves, the Hamas people living in Qatar in their $1 million mansions, eating their frou-frou food. Those guys used funds instead to build these terror tunnels so that they could again try to get into Israel and to harm the country. And whoever thinks that now they need to be supported, when Israel is going to do warfare against them for Hamas, they're after Hamas. So maybe like Bill Maher and this lady, do you think Hamas has to be destroyed? Yes, every last one of them and every cell of every body has to be destroyed if they call themselves Hamas. 100%. How do we do that? Very difficult. But what Israel does before they attack anywhere is, and I've seen all the videos of this, and if not, you can go to Amir Sarfati. He's one person that puts it out, but it's all over Israel. These sites on Twitter that support Israel, you should make sure that you sign up for them and put a notification so that you get their tweets. Because before they're going to bomb there, they let out all of these little tracks, you might say. They put out all these little posters to let them know, we're going to be here in 2 days. Please remove yourselves, your families, your children. Get out of here, because we're going to blow these puppies up. So I'm at a loss. As a mother, I'm at a loss for those who don't move heaven and earth to get their children away from places where they're blowing up. That includes Raza as well. Is that the name, the way you say that? Rafah, that's it. I felt like something was wrong there. So with Rafah, they've done the same thing. They let out all of the little, tracks to let them know, we're going to be here. We're going to be blowing these guys up. You need to leave. And as far as I'm concerned, any Palestinian, who wants to be rid of these people should be turning them in. The Palestinians en masse should be turning Hamas in, because they are terrorists and psychopaths. They've hurt you. They've hurt Israel. They've destroyed your cities, because now Israel has to take care of them, because they've sworn not only will they do October 7th, and have they done October 7th, but they will do it again and again and again. They've sworn that because they're kind of crazy. So I'm thinking you should be turning them in. But shock of all shocks to me, I've got like my Muslim friends here in Canada who don't think that Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorists. This is an occupation. This is the resistance. What? These are the people who live amongst us here in Canada, call themselves Canadians. I think we have a bigger problem than we know. I think this is very alarming. I think not being able to recognize terrorism and that this is actually a holy war, I think that's bad. And not understanding that Israel cannot, and they hate Israel. They hate this. They just think Israel is the big Satan. And I'm sure there's Jews that are bad. Soros, Yuval Noah Harari. But the good people, the innocent people of Israel, no, they're not the bad people. And Netanyahu is doing his very best and fighting a very ethical war to try to take these bad dudes out in the midst of their assault and depravity and psychopathy. He's doing his very best to take them out. And it's just very disturbing that it's not clear. I am shocked it's not clear, but it is clear if you actually look at everything. The problem is the propaganda. The propaganda begins when children are very young in the Middle East. The propaganda against the Jews is very real, and it's hard. It's a lifetime of trying to come out of it, and not many do. Sometimes people find a way out of this propaganda, but not many do. So, okay, let's do the last item. Is this a journalist? All right, a journalist and women's rights activist was at UCLA to deliver a presentation on the sexual violence that Hamas has committed, and then this happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What is...
Oh, so are you journalism students? Mm-hmm. We're showing what happened on October 7th. Do you believe in women's rights?
Journalists, we're not allowed to answer questions.
I'm a journalist. As a journalist, you're allowed to answer questions. Do you believe in women's rights? Obviously. Thank you. Do you believe a woman when she says she's raped? Do you believe a woman when she says she's raped? If she told you she was raped, would you believe her?
I would provide her support.
But would you believe her?
I guess we're just kind of asking, like...
No, so in order for me to tell you, please be fair. Answer me, because I'm asking you.
I guess we won't know like you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. These are young journalists here at UCLA, and they don't want to have a conversation with me when it comes to Jewish women. So this is what happens, you guys. It starts at the universities, and then guess where they go? They go to our local newsrooms, and this is why the Israel-Hamas war has been covered unfairly.
It really has been covered unfairly. And I have Muslim friends basically here. I've sent videos, but they just don't believe that October 7th happened the way it did. So there's a video. I hope that you'll write this down right now. Don't leave us yet, but Screams Before Silence. And it covers the brutality of that day. There's going to be more documentaries being produced on October 7th, and they are being produced with the use of the Hamas body cam. They filmed themselves doing these horrendous acts. They raped women, they raped men, they burned families alive. And yes, they put a baby in an oven. That is all verifiable. So to anyone who thinks that now that because of Hamas's revolutionary work, that Palestine should now be given a state where? What? Disgusting. Honestly, sickens me that there's any confusion over this. So disturbing. So disturbing. On the War Room, Liz Harrington dissects the FBI's techniques when it actually does raids, which have happened in the U.S. Take a look.
They set this whole thing up. This whole thing was a farce. They're his personal presidential records. They're his. They come, he was cooperating for months. They come, set this in motion, try to do it in secret. And, you know, I might be wrong about this, but if I remember correctly, he was not supposed to be in New York that day. He was supposed to be in Mar-a-Lago. At the last minute, he changed his plans. So I think they were planning for President Trump to be there. And they wanted something to happen because this is what they do. Standard procedure, standard protocols. They put trade advisors in leg irons at the airport in public and then throw them in prison. They do pre-dawn raids and tip off CNN so you can watch it live. How many associates, aides, lawyers have been raided by the FBI? So can a dictatorship happen in America? Yeah, you better believe it can happen, because it's happening right now, and it's a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. No matter how much they try to dress it up in suits, these are thugs. This is what happens in a third world country, and it's happening right here in the United States of America.
So all of this is on the heels of the gross unjust treatment of Donald Trump that's happening right now, and the different kind of treatment of Joe Biden. So Joe Biden has all of these private, top secret documents in his garage, which he keeps, and he's writing a book, so he wants to, keep them with him. He shows them to this guy who's writing a book, and basically some things have been destroyed that this book writer was doing, except apparently he's got audio that he hasn't destroyed yet of what Joe Biden has said. And so come to find out that it's been released that when they were going to raid Mar-a-Lago, which is President Trump's home, the commissioning item to go and do this raid basically said that they authorized the use of lethal force if necessary. And it's interesting that she says that Donald Trump was going to be there, because I didn't know that he had changed his schedule and not been there. Any one of you who's a man and they show up at your place and they're going through all your stuff, including your wife's underwear drawer, going through every nook and cranny in your home. Any one of you men would be very upset about that. And you'd be upset because that instinct of protection would be huge. And I imagine that Donald Trump actually has such a huge instinct as that, because he's willing to go through all of this and he's fighting for the American people. If we have another 4 years of a Biden regime, which does not seem possible. I mean, what are they going to do, JT? They're going to bring in Michelle Obama and or Gavin Newsom from California. Did you hear how Joe Biden tried to do speeches this last week? They had to make, was it 81 corrections?
9.
How many?
9.
9 corrections? No, it was 80 some different things that he said wrong. Wasn't it? Okay, maybe. So they narrowed it down and they had to actually release it to the media to say, sorry, he misspoke here and 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 here. And this is what he meant to say. He didn't mean to call them the erectionists. They were the insurrectionists. Sorry, whoops, sorry about that. He can't function. And here he is, the leader of the greatest country on the planet, if we can believe that anymore. And I don't know if we can. So who protects Canada when the United States falls? When they have used up all of their credit and they have printed money ad nauseum to the point of bankrupting the country, which is also something going on in Canada. Like, the agenda is to destroy our nations, our sovereignty, our ability to stand. That is the agenda of the elites. And unfortunately, Trudeau and Biden, the Build Back Better buddies, have engaged in the same kind of actions to bring about the decimation of the middle class, small business, medium-sized businesses destroyed in this last 4 years, never to return, not at this hour. Inflation, the interest rates, the stagnant real estate, and probably an adjustment, quite an adjustment coming. I can't see how it isn't coming, but I'm no expert. I'm just one blonde girl. So I'm going to let y'all go. Laura-Lynn.tv, that's where you can find all of our shows. We list them there. If you're missing something or you want to, go in, do a search, you can find it there. if you go on that donate button that you can see off on the far right hand side, then push the donate button and let us know that you care for us. Thank you. It's been an expensive month heading to Switzerland. I was on a Zoom call this morning with the people that are going to be there. So this is how it's going to go down. We're going to get to do a 3-minute speech. I'm going to be able to speak. They're expecting crowds of maybe 10, 15,000 people. Some say more, you know. Highwire with Del Bigtree is going to broadcast this live. I'm really honored to be able to say a few words, and I'm grateful to the Lord for giving me that opportunity, and I will be honoring him in my speech. But if you go to the donate button there, you can help us out, help us to get the things that we need to do done on behalf of the Canadian people, you, my brothers, my sisters, those of you that can help us. Thank you. And once in a while, we get a U.S. donation, and I am so, thank you. Your money is like double, okay? We get a U.S. check, we're like, woo! You know, if it's $20, it means we got $40. That's how it feels. So my book is Relentless Redemption. That's my story, and I will send that to you if you can become a monthly partner for $20 or more. If you've been donating for a while, we'll also send you the book if you request it. No problem at all. We appreciate you. We appreciate the anonymous donors. We appreciate those that sign up for, you know, monthly giving. You can give one time, large or small. It is all appreciated, and we're very, very grateful. Thank you to those of you who can make substantial contributions at this time to help us. Another way to send any funds would be through e-transfer, and you can do LLTT live at pm.me, LLTT live at pm.me, and all my other emails that I've ever put up also still continue to work. So if you've done it before, don't worry, you just keep using the one you've always done if it's already in your, you know, in your bank account. And some of you are looking for Ivermectin and Hydroxychloroquine. Contact Mia at SozoHealth at proton.me. Mia at SozoHealth, and she will help you. Also, if you're looking for gold and silver, we highly recommend Steve Merrill, and that is at Sun City Silver and Gold. Sovereignize at protonmail.com. Gold and silver beginning to move, everyone. And when a dollar collapses and when a dollar is having a hard time and everyone's like waking up to the fact that you can't keep printing money and thinking that it's the same value, it's not backed by, you know, we've left the gold standard. But sovereignize at protonmail.com. And it's really fascinating what Steve Merrill's been sending me some articles, and you know, some things are just looking really good. This is a very, very good time to invest. I heard a guy today say that, you know, he figures that gold should be up near, it was about 1,000 or 1,500 more than it is now by the end of 2025. So that's a good investment. Like, let's say, you know, you buy $10,000 of gold right now. What does that mean? It means that, you know, you've got probably 15 or 16,000 of gold, you know, in this next year. So it's very good. It's very, very good. It's a good investment. The silver and gold are the Lord's, and we appreciate that a lot. Also, check out and make sure that you see the short version of what Dr. Byron Bridle shared a few days ago. I won't mention it now, but also we put up a new video on my Rumble regarding the fabulous use of nicotine, how important nicotine is for our bodies and what it does. It's revolutionary. So please check that out. And I'm going to leave you today with Luke 4, and it says, Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, left the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing during those days, and at the end of them, he was hungry. I'll bet. So I don't know if you've ever felt like you've been tempted by the devil, you know, in a 40-day period, and he offers you the world, but in the end, his offers are meaningless because he is truly powerless, and the Lord God will deal with him. The Lord God will judge the enemy of our souls in the end times, and he will face his eternity of justice. So the devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, tell this stone to become bread." And Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone." So even though he was so hungry, and you know those guys on, if you ever watch Survivor, right? They get really hungry and they're willing to give up a lot just to have a bite to eat. But Jesus at the end of 40 days says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. And then the devil led him up to a high place and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And he said to him, "I will give you all their authority and splendor. It has been given to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to. If you worship me, it will be yours." Jesus answered, "It is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." I wanted to highlight something that the enemy said here. Satan himself said that the authority and the splendor of earthly kingdoms has been given to him. And in reading that, I'm like, what? So is he in power here and God doesn't have power? No. God is fully large and in charge, but the enemy was given, he was put on this earth and he was given authority, so to speak, of these kingdoms. And that is why we see evil so massively displayed in our world right now. That is why the deception is so huge. God, in a manner, is working through us and his people, and he's working. But the enemy has been given a certain amount of leeway to cause absolute damage and chaos, but not against you and me. Because if we are hid in Jesus, then our lives are behind the veil of his power. Psalms 91, that his angels will have charge over us. We are nestled firmly under the shadow of the Almighty. We are protected. He is our rear guard and our foreguard. He is the awesome one who does not allow us to be harmed. Nothing that happens to you does not first pass through the hand of God. And everything, every single brutal thing that the enemy has ever done to you, the Lord God is able to turn that around for good if you will trust him. Is this a process? Yes, it often is. Is it difficult and trying and painful? Yes, it can be, absolutely. But our God is powerful. He did not give up any authority. He did not give in to the enemy, and neither should we, because the day of accounting is coming. Stand firm in the Lord your God. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless. It's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.laura-lynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.